Supervisor Safety Management System Training, Module 2. Module 2 will begin with the storage, protection, and record retention. If any personnel leave Bryers Contracting, all access to information is terminated immediately to prevent any unlawful or unauthorized access to information. Anytime an employee is transferred between Bryers Contracting operations, the employee file must be copied for the transfer location, and the permanent file must remain at the head office. Record retention will be as follows. For confined space entries, 2 years. Safety meetings, 2 years. Site inspections, 2 years. Observations, 2 years. Tailgate meetings, 2 years. Injury and illness, 3 years. Non-injury events, 3 years. And any WCB claims, 5 years. Bryers Contracting uses key performance indicators to assess performance in achieving our safety objectives. These indicators, if measured over time, can show if safety has improved. Bryers Contracting uses an injury and illness record keeping system and tracks this through specific company methods. Total recordable injury frequency, or TRIF. This is calculated by adding the total number of injuries that resulted in lost time, medical aid, or restricted work, and multiplying the total by 200,000 and dividing the total number of exposure hours. So example, 1 lost time incident plus 1 modified work incident plus 1 restricted work times 200,000 divided by a million equals a 0.6 TRIF. Now lost time injury frequency is calculated much the same way using the OSHA formula. However, it just focuses on the lost time incident. So you'll have your LTI times 200,000 divided by your exposure hours equaling your LTIF. Proactive interventions are established by adding the number of proactive preventative measures taken on behalf of Bryers Contracting to control hazards and prevent injuries and other occurrences. These include, but are not limited to, site observations, safety meetings, job hazard assessments completed, near miss or hazard ID cards completed, tailgate meetings, and training. Reactive interventions are actions taken after an event has occurred. These include, but are not limited to, lost time injury, restricted work case, medical aid, first aid, property damage, equipment damage, violation, environmental, and motor vehicle collision. An incident may be defined as an undesired event that results in personal injury, illness, or death, or damage to property or to the environment, or that under slightly different circumstances could have resulted in personal injury, illness, or death, property damage, or loss. An incident includes a close call or a near miss. For reporting an incident, personnel are required to report to their foreman or the supervisor all incidents as soon as practical. The manager will review the details and conduct or arrange for an investigation as appropriate. Those involved in the event will assist with the investigation as required. Proactive reporting. This is the reporting of identified hazards or conditions that might contribute to the occurrence of an incident or accident in the workplace, and the report is submitted before an event has a chance to occur. We identify latent hazards using the following methods. Near miss reporting. This is an unplanned event that did not result in injury, illness, or damage, but had the potential to do so. This is an event where, if the circumstances were slightly changed, may have resulted in injury or loss. Hazard reporting. Employees are encouraged to report hazards encountered during their daily duties. This report is submitted using the Hazard ID concern cards. These cards can be found on site in various areas. This allows the company to correct hazards before they evolve into an accident or an incident. Safety meetings are held in different formats and are a great tool in allowing two-way communications between the company management and personnel. This allows employees to express any health and safety related issues to management. When action items are identified, they must be prioritized, evaluated, and corrected. Safety meeting topics will be established and be consistently delivered to all employees according to the project or location schedule. It is mandatory that all personnel on site attend these meetings and sign an acknowledgement. It is recommended that the meeting be held at the beginning of the week to ensure workers have the proper attitude and commitment to work safely all week. This may vary depending on the job schedule and scope or client demand. Topics discussed may include the following: task-relevant safety topics, JHA reviews, incident reviews, inspection results, worker feedback, procedural updates, company performance, industry updates, inspection and audit results, client feedback, joint occupational health and safety meeting minutes and actions, internal company information, worker feedback. Actions or concerns from these meetings will be addressed, documented, and the follow-up communicated to the workforce at subsequent meeting. Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee meeting. These meetings are held on sites on a quarterly basis with 20 or more employees scheduled to last over 90 days. Each location must assemble a Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee that consists of members of management and representatives from all disciplines. Minutes will be taken during this meeting and any issues will be assigned corrective actions. A copy of the meeting minutes will be posted for review for all employees and reviewed in subsequent field and facility safety meetings. Daily tailgate meetings. These are conducted prior to the commencement of each workday to review the task at hand and identify hazards and create two-way communications daily. These will be conducted by the foreman and/or supervisor with their crews, and crews will sign in acknowledgement. Reactive reporting is done because of a negative occurrence, thereby the term reactive reporting. This type of reporting is historical in nature after the occurrence. Examples of reactive reports at Bryers Contracting are as follows: reporting of occurrences through the company or client's processes, Workers' Compensation Board incident reports such as physician, worker, and employer-generated reports as per the Workers' Compensation Act. Any injury that results in an employee requiring a visit to a physician and may result in a lost time injury or modified duties must be reported to the immediate supervisor, who will then immediately notify the site HSE department. Together they will arrange to have the worker transported to the designated medical facility. The initial investigation report form will be completed within 24 hours. The final investigation report must be completed within 7 days of the event, unless otherwise agreed upon, and forwarded to any client representative and management for review and follow-up. A lost time injury is a work-related occurrence that results in a company employee being unable to return to work on the day past the date of the injury, while a restricted work case is a work-related occurrence that results in a company employee being unable to perform a minimum of 80% of their regular duties and is required to modify the employee's duties until they can return to the pre-injury or regular duties. The worker will be placed in the company's return to work program. Medical aid is a work-related injury that is not severe enough to warrant more than 1 day off past the date of injury, but where medical treatment by a doctor is administered depending on local compensation legislation. The following are criteria for a medical aid classification: so treatment of infections, application of antiseptics, treatment of 2nd or 3rd degree burns, application of staples or sutures, removal of a foreign body from the eye, prescriptions other than a single dose or precautionary to prevent infection on the first visit, positive X-ray diagnosis, and dental appointments resulting in diagnosis of damage due to incident resulting in repair. First aid injuries. Any injuries that require first aid treatment must be reported to the direct supervisor immediately, and the supervisor will then notify the site HSE department upon receiving notification of the incident. HSE may have to notify a client representative depending on the requirements in the project-specific HSE execution plan. The supervisor will be responsible for escorting the employee to the allocated first aid facility and ensure the documented initial report is submitted to the HSE department within 4 hours. If a visit to a physician is required, then the site foreman or supervisor must notify the corporate safety manager, who will then oversee the claim to ensure proper WCB reporting and follow-up is completed. A non-occupational injury is a non-work related injury to any Bryers contracting employee that occurs while the employee is off duty or not performing work on behalf of the company. These injuries must be reported to the employee supervisor along with the HSE department to avoid injury aggravation and escalation to a work-related case. Non-occupational injuries will be documented in the employee's file via a standard statement form signed by the employee. Bryers Contracting believes that workers injured on the job have the right to modify duties. It is a proven fact that workers who participate in a return-to-work program effectively return to their pre-accident duties faster than those who do not. The company requires that all injured workers participate in the company return-to-work program were supported by their physician, and all claims are managed at a corporate level with support from management and supervision. Workers are assessed for restrictions because of their injury, and the company modifies their job duties to accommodate their injury. We use this by using the company claims management package, including but not limited to the modified work offer, used to officially offer the employee a set of duties that aligns with the restriction outlined by the attending medical professional. The worker is responsible to abide by all requirements of the return to work program and must take all reasonable precautions to ensure there is no further aggravation of the injury. Functional Abilities Form. This form is issued to the attending medical professional for completion. The worker's restrictions will be identified on the form, and the form returned to the site HSE departments or a return to work plan can be established by the HSE department and supervision. WCB Worker Report. The Jurisdictional Workers' Compensation Board requires that this form be completed by the worker within 24 hours and submitted to the WCB. Return to regular duties form. Upon receiving a written clearance from a medical professional, this form will be issued to the worker prior to return to pre-injury employment. The worker and his supervisor will sign in acknowledgement that they are cleared to return to duties. WCB Employer Report Form. The Jurisdictional Workers' Compensation Board requires that this form be completed by the company within 72 hours and submitted to the WCB. This can be completed online or submitted in a handwritten copy and mailed to the WCB. Bryers Contracting will investigate occurrences that are serious in nature or have the potential to be serious using the company's investigation procedure found in this section of the safety management system. If the event does not warrant a formal investigation, whether it's a low actual and/or potential risk, then the report is recorded and causes and corrective actions are still established and entered into the database and filed for trend analysis. The objectives of investigations are to establish the facts, identify root causes, contributing factors, and hazards relating to the event, review the adequacy of existing controls and procedures, report the findings to management and clients, recommend corrective actions that can improve efficiency, reduce risk, and prevent reoccurrence, detect developing trends that can be analyzed to identify specific or recurring problems, identify any key learnings and distribute these learnings to all areas of our operation. Occurrences which occur at the shop will be investigated by the manager. When an event occurs at a client's work site, the on-site supervisor, in cooperation with the client safety officer or representative, when available, will conduct the investigation. All investigations are to be followed up with recommendations and reviewed by management, and appropriate action must be taken as quickly as possible to remedy any problems and prevent similar situations in the future. The results from an investigation will be communicated to all affected workers and will be reviewed at the next scheduled safety meeting. All investigation reports shall be kept on file for a minimum of 3 years. Occurrences. Property damage. This is damage to company or third-party property, whether it be structures or material. Theft. This is the unauthorized removal of any property from any personal, company, or customer location. Vandalism or sabotage. This is the deliberate destruction of property, equipment, or materials with the intent to cause loss or injury. Non-compliance. This is the intentional deviation from company or client rules, policy, or procedure. Motor vehicle collision. This is when any type of motorized vehicle comes in contact with any moving or stationary object causing loss. Environmental. This is a release of any type of undesired substance in any amount contacting the ground or waterway. And finally, equipment damage. This is where any damage is sustained to a piece of operating equipment not covered under the motorized vehicle collision classification. The investigation process follows this flowchart found in your safety manual. Incident occurs. The worker stops what they are doing, reports to the supervisor. The scene is frozen to prevent any altering of conditions at the time of incident. The foreman immediately reports to HSE, Ops, and Client Rep. So now we look at the incident. Is it critical, high, or moderate in loss? If not, a formal investigation report is not required, but a near-miss incident report must be completed and sent to head office. If it is, then a formal investigation is required. It will be investigated by the supervisor, foreman with HSE assistance. From there, they will interview and obtain statements. They will examine the material involved, examine the equipment and maintenance history, examine documentation and records, and get photos or do a site sketch. Then they will analyze the immediate causes, analyze the lack of control causes, analyze the basic causes, develop a corrective action plan around those causal factors, assign corrective action and target dates, enter the corrective actions in database for tracking, receive confirmation of corrective action closure, and complete an incident alert for posting and review. Your safety manual also contains sample questions for the investigation. Here's just an example. Date and time of the incident, employee's age and experience, scheduled day of the work week, weather conditions, employee performance history, was there a distraction, did anything leading up to the event take the worker out of their rhythm, was there an A&D test conducted, were there witnesses, did they issue a statement, is there evidence that supports the employee's story, does the employee believe they were properly trained? Question to the employee, what could you have done to avoid the occurrence? Question to the supervisor, anything that you could have done to prevent? Proper PPE being worn properly, proper condition. Last ergonomics training. Was the worker in a proper position for the work? Did fatigue play a role? Has the worker had this type of injury before? What part of the body was injured and what was the extent of the injury? And was the worker in the line of fire? Now we look at the near-miss incident report. This document is used when reporting incidents and near-miss events that result in a low severity rating. Field foreman and/or supervision are to complete and send their respective supervisor for review and closure. The report is then forwarded to HSE department for final review, filing, and tracking. The investigation report form. This document is used when reporting incidents that result in a moderate, high, or critical actual potential severity. Supervision and management are responsible to investigate the incident using this format with the assistance of the HSE department. The initial report must be completed within 24 hours of the incident, and the final report with causal analysis and corrective actions within 7 days. Management involvement. Management is required to have investigations to determine if changes should be made to the safety program or work practices or procedures to reduce or eliminate the possibility of reoccurrence. Investigations may be conducted by a supervisor, the HSE representative, the manager, or an outside consultant at the discretion of the manager. Management will also notify relevant authorities as they may be required based on the seriousness of the incident. Management is also required to ensure that the results of the investigation are discussed at the next scheduled safety meeting. Worker involvement. All employees and contractors, including those who may not have been directly involved, are required to provide their full cooperation during the investigation. With any event, there are causes that contributed and directly caused the event to occur. By identifying these causes, we can drill down to the root of the issue and put corrective measures in place to prevent reoccurrence of the actual or potential loss. Bryers Contracting uses a systematic cause analysis technique to perform causal analysis on moderate to critical events based on the company risk assessment matrix. Personnel performing causal analysis will be trained in the use of the SCAT method and chart, and all causal factors will be reviewed by the HSE department to ensure accuracy and definition. Recommended corrective action. Each root cause identified is required to be assigned a corrective action. The corrective action may range from reviewing policy with staff to a safe work practice or job procedure change to eliminate or reduce the hazard. Corrective action plan review. Once a corrective action plan has been approved by management and supervision, the CAP will be assigned a due date for completion. The due dates are based on the risk level determined during the investigation period. Corrective actions and dates must be assigned to coincide with the company areas of control. The company risk assessment matrix is to be used to assess risk associated with the hazard present. It is also used post-incident to determine the severity of the incident. Find your actual potential severity in the Severity Consequence Estimation Guide and find the appropriate level it corresponds to. For example, first aid equaling moderate. Next, use the chart up top to determine the level of risk involved. Select moderate, as seen as our example, and chart down to the probability of the incident reoccurring. This will give you the risk level. Bryers Contracting is committed to ensure that all tasks are assessed to identify known or potential hazards associated with the work. Job hazard assessments, or JHAs, self-task observation pre-assessment, or stop cards, will be utilized to identify hazards associated with the tasks undertaken by Bryers Contracting employees to identify the hazards and controls necessary to perform the work safely. Managers, supervisors, joint health and safety committee members, and workers as applicable should be involved in the development of the hazard assessment and must be reviewed with all workers performing the tasks. This policy applies to all full-time, part-time, and hourly, along with subcontracted construction and staff personnel associated or conducting business with Bryers Contracting at any respective project or facility location. Hazard can be defined as any situation with potential to cause personal injury, illness, or death, or damage to property or to the environment. The 6 groups of hazards are physical hazards. These can cause injury by physical contact, such as acute burns, abrasions, etc. Chemical hazards. Hazards the worker may be exposed to, such as fumes, gases, aerosols, corrosives, alkalis, chemicals, solvents, sprays, heavy metals, poisons, and pesticides. Environmental hazards. Hazards which are or may be present in the work environment, such as noise, heat, cold. Biological hazards. Hazards that can cause illness through exposure, such as hantavirus, allergies. The symptoms of exposure to biological hazards may occur rapidly or after extended periods of time. Psychosocial hazards. These are hazards which may affect the health or productivity of a worker, such as stress, fatigue, boredom, impairment, long-term effects of shift work. And ergonomic hazards. These affect the general health of the worker due to such things such as cramped workspaces, improperly adjusted equipment, and repetitive tasks. A risk can be defined as the danger the hazard poses and is determined by the severity that could be caused in relation to the probability of it impacting the person or the equipment. Selecting an appropriate control is one of the most critical aspects to effectively mitigate a hazard. Hazards will be controlled by the following established hierarchy of controls. First is elimination, which includes substitution. Remove the hazard from the workplace or substitute hazardous materials or machines with less hazardous ones. Second is engineering controls. Includes designs or modifications to plants, equipment, ventilation systems, and processes that reduce the source of exposure. Third is administrative controls. These are controls that alter the way the work is done, including the timing of work, policies, safe work practices, hazard assessments, orientation, and other training. And finally, we have personal protective equipment. Equipment worn by individuals to reduce exposure, such as contact with chemicals or exposure to noise. This control is the least favorable and is the last line of defense prior to the hazard contacting the worker. The purpose of a job hazard assessment is to identify critical task hazards or potential cause of accidents in each step of the operation and to develop solutions to eliminate or control these hazards. A critical task is one that may include the following factors: jobs with high frequency of occurrences which pose a significant threat to health and safety, jobs that have the potential to produce fatalities, disabling injuries, illnesses, or environmental harm, newly established jobs whose hazards may not yet be evident because of lack of experience, and jobs that are to be performed in hazardous and/or unfamiliar environments. Some examples of critical tasks are, but not limited to, the following: working at heights, working on electrical systems, excavation activities, confined space work, work around power lines, working with hazardous materials, rigging and hoisting, working over water, and large material lifting tasks. The following steps are a guideline in conducting a job hazard assessment. First, define the job to be assessed. Next, break the job into individual steps. Then identify the hazards or potential accidents and rate the hazard using the Bryers contracting risk matrix. Develop a solution to eliminate or control the hazard at the source following the hierarchy of controls. Identify high-risk workers and tasks. Determine if a hazard can be solved by training and the type of training required. Educate workers regarding the hazards through a review of the JHA at safety meetings or tailgate meetings, and if applicable, attach supporting practices and procedures. Self-task observation pre-assessment or stop card. Bryers Contracting uses the stop card as our FLHA. They provide a process for workers and supervisors to identify in the clearest manner possible the hazards of daily tasks and how to control or eliminate them from the activity following the hierarchy of controls. They are designed to review the immediate task to be performed for potential health and safety hazards associated with the activity. This is a hazard assessment at the specific work location, not a JHA. If the task is complex enough that it warrants a JHA and/or a safe work practice and procedure, this is the time to review all those documents with all workers involved. All storage facilities for material like fuels, chemicals, and/or other hazardous materials shall be in such a way as to minimize the potential for any environmental damage. The storage facilities for hazardous or potential hazardous material must be located at least 100 meters from any body of water. Approval for all storage facilities must be received from the client prior to assignment. All storage sites shall keep material in original containers whenever possible. Be adequately secure when not in use. Have adequate fire suppression available. Have a suitable spill kit readily available. Have no smoking signage. And SES available for all controlled products.